Our body is made absolutely divinely and magically. I mean, we can donate half of our liver and it regenerates itself. Our body knows how to heal and our body knows how to function. And if it's confused, then I truly believe that there's a reason for that. And I've been on the hunt for that reason for over 2 decades now. And a lot of the answers that I have found, or pretty much all the answers that I have found, stem back to the quality of our digestion and how well our gut is functioning.
Welcome to another episode of the Elevate podcast. I'm your host, Delaney McGuire. Here on the show, we're all about products and people who make an impact. We interview very successful entrepreneurs, founders, tech experts, VCs, other health experts, really anyone who's scaling their business, scaling their impact, and creating a ton of income along the way. My number one goal on the show is to tease out the tangible and applicable tools and tips that you can apply directly to your life, your business, your mission, so that you're scaling your impact and your income at the same time. Today on the show, we have Chelsea Haines. Chelsea is the CEO and founder of the Gut Health Agency. This is a slightly different episode, but it was one of my favorites that I've recorded in a long time. Her mission, and she's got quite a large social media following, so she's an expert in business as well. But what she does is she helps individuals optimize their gut health and their nervous system to function highly in their life. And this was a really interesting conversation to me because I initially wanted to go down the route of how did you grow and scale your business. But we actually spent most of the conversation of me really understanding her subject matter expertise, because I have a true belief that to be a successful founder, successful entrepreneur or leader, you have to really dial in your own well-being. And that doesn't just mean optimizing your energy and being focused, but it also means dealing with your mental health and dealing with things like your personal trauma and learning how to heal those things so that you are not an emotional mess for other people, but you're truly embodied and you're grounded and you're a strong leader. These are topics that are very important to me. And I was so fascinated with Chelsea because she links gut health to your nervous system. And for those of you who really know me, I have a deep belief that understanding how to optimize and regulate your nervous system is the most valuable thing you can do for your leadership skills. So we really just dove deep into this conversation. So if this doesn't seem like a topic that you know much about or you're that curious about, I promise you will learn a lot from digging into this conversation. And you'll probably leave with a few takeaways of how you can grow, not just for your business or the success you're looking to create in your life, but truly to optimize your sense of well-being and joy and fulfillment you get to experience literally for the rest of your life. So give this episode a listen. I learned a ton from Chelsea. She truly is an expert and she's an embodied leader. So without further ado, let's jump straight into this episode.
All right, Chelsea, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you today.
So happy to be here, Delaney. Thank you so much.
And I love doing episodes like this. For anyone who's been listening to the podcast for a little while, at least 3 or 4 episodes, I try to bring in someone who's an expert on something I'm just genuinely super curious about. And you're clearly a gut, and it's interesting, at least your Instagram bio, it's like a gut health and nervous system expert or coach. And those are 2 things that I'm very curious about and spend a lot of time learning about for myself. And I am very curious to understand how you integrate those 2 things, or at least how you think about that. But yeah, I'm really excited for this conversation because when I get to sit down with people who are not only an expert at something that I find interesting, but also millions of other people find interesting, but also they're building a successful business on the back of their passion. Those are conversations I love because we get to dabble in both the subject matter expertise, but then also understand your journey to actually build a successful business or something like this. And those listeners who are maybe at the early start of that journey will hopefully get some really great tips along the way. So
Awesome.
I would love for you to just start with giving us a little overview of yourself and your journey and what are you doing today and what are you excited about?
Yeah, totally. I am the founder of the Gut Health Agency. We launched the Gut Health Agency early last year, and I've been coaching for many more years than that. The cool thing about what I do is that I've been able to take my life experiences and shift them into a signature program that helps people heal in a very short amount of time. And that personal story for me looked like autoimmune disease. It manifested as psoriasis. I've pretty much dealt with psoriasis for my entire adult life. And I've been able to manage it holistically. And I'm really proud of that. This is where I always like to add disclaimers. I absolutely am grateful for and love Western medicine in the times that it's appropriate. But when it comes to chronic illness and chronic symptoms, especially with autoimmune disease, Western medicine and allopathic medicine just had really not caught up to a root cause approach. And the answer for most people dealing with autoimmune disease is you need to just kill your immune system because that's the only way that you can navigate these symptoms. And, the
And
disclaimer
that's
here is what's that
antibiotics.
medicine? Not antibiotics. Actually, they're called immunosuppressants. So
Got it.
they are biologics. They're in a category of biologic medications that actually suppress your immune system. And I will say for anyone who's listening who has an autoimmune disease and is on a biologic, bless that medicine, because if it's helping you wake up in the morning and get through your day, then wonderful. But for me, I just never wanted to go down that route. I live internationally. I've traveled the world. I live in Central America now. Suppressing my immune system just never really felt like the right option. And for me, intuitively, I always felt if my immune system is quote unquote attacking myself, and the only answer that Western medicine has is to suppress my immune system or effectively kill my immune system, then that just doesn't really land. And I was curious about why is my immune system confused in the first place? I really do not personally subscribe to the fact that our immune system just randomly decides to attack our own body. Our body is made absolutely divinely and magically. I mean, we can donate half of our liver and it regenerates itself. Our body knows how to heal and our body knows how to function. And if it's confused, then I truly believe that there's a reason for that. And I've been on the hunt for that reason for over 2 decades now. And a lot of the answers that I have found, or pretty much all the answers that I have found, stem back to the quality of our digestion and how well our gut is functioning. And that the answer to that question is, or that statement is multifaceted, and why the nervous system also plays a really important role into all of it. So that's a bird's eye view. And I'm sure we'll have a chance to dive a little bit deeper into a lot of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think based on how we started this conversation, it makes sense to just jump straight into the actual meat of what you do and what you're passionate about. And then we can touch on business type stuff later. I'd love to hear that statement you just made, that it really all is tied back to the quality of digestion. How does one measure their quality of digestion? What are the different pillars or the different metrics you're looking at when you're understanding that?
Totally.
Wow.
And, in my company, the Gut Health Agency, we use something called the GI map test. It's a functional test that actually gives us answers on paper to that exact question. But before we even dive into the testing aspect, we really need to just consider food goes in one end and the waste of that food is supposed to come out the other end. And what happens in between is that food is intended to be converted into energy. And we are meant to absorb the nutrients and to eliminate the waste that is not serving us, whether that be a parasite or just fiber, dietary fiber, whatever it may be. And humans have been using food to fuel our system from day one. There has never been a time in human existence that we don't eat food and poop it out the other side. So then what has changed? The efficiency of our body's ability to absorb nutrients and eliminate waste has dramatically declined. And why is that? There's a lot of answers to that question. And a paradigm shift that I would love to offer to everyone is that it's not the food's fault. I say that with a disclaimer. If you are eating highly processed foods all day, every day, and you're never eating anything that comes from the earth or walks on the earth or swims in the oceans, then the food that you're eating may be a key factor in the bigger picture of the health and well-being of your GI tract. But even more importantly, what is the state of your nervous system? And I guess as far as to answer your question a little bit more specifically, how do you define good digestion? When you eat, is it pleasant or does it hurt? Do you have acid reflux or bloat shortly thereafter? And do you have a bowel movement roughly 24 hours later? What is your motility? How fast does food move through your system? And you can do certain tests to determine that. A very simple one is eat corn on the cob and see how quickly you can see it come out the other side. A week later, if you finally see corn on the cob coming out the other side, you've got very slow motility. And a lot of people may say, I've just always had slow motility. I only go poop about 2 to 3 times per week. That is a chronic gut health issue. We should be going to the bathroom 1 to 2 times per day, every single day. So that's definitely a key marker. If you're not pooping every single day, then we've got that's a key marker in slow motility and poor gut health. And I think just overall, the understanding and awareness that our gut and our brain are one and the same. They even look alike. They're actually multiplied and divided from the same stem cells that we are obviously all multiplied and divided from the same cells when you really come down to the two cells that come together to create us. But obviously cells multiply and divide and they become different things in the womb. The brain and the gut actually come from the same cells, and they are directly and intimately connected through the vagus nerve. Another marker for good gut health or poor gut health truly is our mental health. How well do you handle stress? Do you feel like you deal with anxiety or depression on a regular basis? Are you on medication for those things? And is there ways that we can optimize or improve your gut health in order to support your mental health and vice versa? It's a two-way street.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So as I hear you talk about that, you're talking about all these different downstream implications, your mood, anxiety, depression. How are you able to actually pinpoint? So let's say someone's walking around and they're feeling pretty lethargic and maybe they have a lot of anxiety. How do you go about determining if it's related to the gut or what are and I know everyone's different. So every time you're working with someone, they're going to probably have a different protocol. Like what are some of those other things that you're doing with these people to actually investigate to really understand the root cause, and then maybe even the protocols that you're working on?
Yeah, for sure. First and foremost, we do what's called a GI map test. This is a functional stool test. If you were to break up all of the sections of this test and request it from your doctor, it would be multiple different tests and thousands of dollars. What I love about this functional test is that it's worth its weight in gold in pretty much 30% of it. And then you also have the other 70% of the test itself that actually shows us pancreatic function, liver and gallbladder function. It shows us how your inflammatory markers. It shows us it's essentially a marker of your microbiome. So your microbiome is defined as the colony of bacteria and yeast and viruses that live within your GI tract. We have microbiomes all over our body, on the outside of our body and inside our body. Every orifice in our body has a different microbiome. The health of our external microbiomes, our armpits, our genitals, our mouth, our ears, are directly related to the health of our internal microbiomes, our stomach, our intestines, and our colon. And the cool thing about the GI map test is it really gives us that specific glimpse into what is the health of our microbiome. And if you consider anything like a rainforest, or maybe I really like to use a coral reef as an example. If you have a coral reef that is alive and well, there is going to be a symbiotic ecosystem of vegetation and animals that eat that vegetation, and also animals that eat each other. We can categorize this as good gut bugs or quote unquote opportunistic or quote unquote bad gut bugs. If a predatory animal comes into or is introduced into a coral reef that's not intended to be there, it's going to eat the other animals that in turn eat the algae on the coral reef, and it's going to mess up the balance and the ecosystem of that entire coral reef and probably lead to some really big problems. An overgrowth of those opportunistic fish that are now eating all the other fish that are supposed to eat the algae. So now the algae is probably overgrowing. So this is where we start to see issues where women have yeast infections or candida overgrowth, right? There's not enough of that symbiotic relationship between these different bacteria and viruses living in your gut. So the GI map test is it's an amazing validation to somebody's symptoms. And I skipped right over that part. I said first and foremost, we do the GI map test because that's really like the fun part. We get to look at the inside of your digestive markers and truly see on paper how well is your gut functioning. But we also, first and foremost, do a comprehensive intake form. And this is it's not your standard intake form that you get when you walk into any doctor's office. We dive deep into your trauma history. We want to know, who are you? Who are you as a person? And really, how do you feel? So for anybody listening, symptoms are an amazing marker for health. Our tagline at the Gut Health Agency is trust your gut and digest your life. First and foremost, I want to know what your body is telling me. And if you've ever read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, a person who's experienced chronic stress or multiple shocking moments in their life that we can categorize somewhere on the scale of trauma, then that person is going to become an expert at ignoring themselves. It's an exact quote from the book, actually. It's a survival technique to start ignoring our gut instincts, the signs and symptoms from our body, everything from I'm experiencing severe pain all the way beginning to I don't know when I'm hungry, right? These basic signs and symptoms of our body. We know what it feels like when we have to go pee. If we ignore that sensation for long enough, we become an expert at ignoring that sensation. And before you know it, our body starts to learn those behaviors. Before we even get into testing, we need to know, what is your body telling us? What are the signs and symptoms happening to and within your body? Which is also really empowering, because 6 months later, after we do healing protocols and we look at your nervous system and we look at your GI tract, we don't necessarily have to spend the money on doing another functional test, because now you've become an expert at trusting your body and your symptoms to tell you what is going on within your body. I think we live in a time and space where we're so accustomed to looking outside of ourselves for the answers that we already have within ourselves. So I guess we'll pause there. We'll start at that. But definitely signs and symptoms. Where are you on a medical symptom questionnaire? Where do you land as far as like different markers for health and being from your own perspective? And then a GI map test, which is just, if anything, super validating for someone who's been on a chronic gut health journey for a long time. Having that on paper and saying, oh, wow, there really is something going on here. Look at these inflammatory levels. Look at these GI markers. Look at how weak my pancreas is. And then based on those results and based on your symptoms, we can then create protocols that involve lifestyle, mindset, supplement if necessary, because supplements are supplementary to the foundations of health and being, stress management, sleep, good hydration, and nourishment. So we really focus on adding food to your plate rather than eliminating food. And it's a different paradigm than what most people are accustomed to, especially when it comes to healing, for example, from food sensitivities. If you're dealing with food sensitivities or you're covered in hives all the time, most doctors would say, just eliminate those foods. And then before you know it, you're stuck eating chicken and rice for the rest of your life. And you're living in a really sad reality that's not Technicolor. And that is not what this world is all about.
I love that. Also, apologies if there's a bit of background noise. I'm on puppy watching duty and this dog is being crazy, doing my best. But I really appreciate you sharing all of that. And that's really interesting. I was filing because I definitely have Body Keeps the Score on my bookshelf. I've read it. Really interested by that whole concept. And yeah, it just really makes a ton of sense. And even one of the things that you didn't share explicitly, but intuitively, I would think probably really matters too, is if you have experienced some trauma like most people have in their life, and what if they haven't necessarily, it's hard to say you dealt with it and it's done forever, but if you haven't really with those things and you're constantly dysregulated state, my understanding is it's really hard to properly digest. If so, I'd imagine a decent amount of your work is like really supporting people. And you mentioned like getting enough rest and relaxation. I'm sure that has a huge play into the digestion process and how the gut functions, like regardless of what we're eating.
Yeah. So let's taking it back again to this deeper root cause. You can do a very quick Google, and I have a whole free masterclass that dives deep into this, but we essentially have two responses: the sympathetic state and the parasympathetic state, which are controlled by our central nervous system, our subconscious mind. And when we are in a sympathetic fight, flight, freeze, or fawn state, so you've probably heard, if anyone's listening, the fight or flight response. What most people, or what doesn't get as much media attention, is the freeze and fawn states. For anybody who feels like they are just walking around like a zombie, or if they are just stuck on the couch feeling super unmotivated, or fawning, people pleasing. For all the people pleasers in the room, this is for you. That is a trauma response. So especially for all my people here who say, I've had a good childhood, or I've never experienced some major trauma, or I've never been to war. Who am I to say that my woes are worse than somebody else? And it's really important to remember that your brain does not know the difference between A balloon that popped at your second birthday and it scared the crap out of you, or I should say it scared the crap inside of you, or going to war. And the way that our brain perceives these shocking moments, these things that happen, a car accident, or anything that you've experienced that was a shock to your system, an email that said that you're randomly fired from your job, that is severely traumatizing and shocking. It's shocking for the system. And this is not a conversation about comparing traumas. So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I'm not saying that you've experienced, if you've experienced extreme trauma, this is not degrading you. But what I am saying is that the brain, the subconscious brain, perceives shocking moments all the same. And that's just because that subconscious brain, our lizard brain is very primal. It's either on or it's off. It's survive and procreate or rest and digest. So I think it's just a really important conversation to open up for anyone I've had it pretty good in life. I can guarantee within 30 minutes of getting on the phone together, we could find something that is going to elicit emotion for you. And before you know it, you're going to feel it in your throat and tears are going to well into your eyes. And that right there is a sign that you are dysregulated or you have experienced a shocking moment in your life that is still stuck. When we are stuck in a sympathetic state, digestion turns off. Period. And I don't want to demonize the fight or flight state because guess what also lives in the sympathetic state? Orgasms live in a sympathetic state. And that's a pretty damn good thing if you're asking me. However, if we were experiencing an orgasm 24/7, 4 weeks of the month, 12 months of the year, it would probably become painful, right? So the magic in an orgasm is the recovery when we shift back into the parasympathetic rest and digest state. Parasympathetic is also where we get turned on. This is where our digestion gets turned on. I'll add one more example there to really bring it home. If you talk to any bodybuilder, they will say, yes, you need to go into that stress state during exercise to tear your muscles so that in the recovery state, we need to carve out time for rest and to shift back into the parasympathetic state. After we've ripped our muscles to shreds, they can rebuild stronger and bigger and better. And that rest is actually where the gains actually come from. It doesn't come from the sympathetic exercise state. There's value in both, and we're not here to demonize either state. But to bring it home regarding gut health, it's very simple. When we are in a sympathetic state, saliva does not get produced. Hydrochloric acid stops being produced in the stomach. And if you're having acid reflux, it's because you don't have enough acid. It's not because you have too much. That's a whole nother story. You don't efficiently eliminate the contents from your stomach into your intestines because there's not those signs and triggers telling your stomach to pump out into your intestines. You don't have bile or pancreatic enzymes being produced. So once that food makes its way into your intestines, you don't have anything else in there to help you break down your food. That's why that food is now feeding the opportunistic bugs in your colon and you are seeing undigested food in your stool. If you see lettuce or tomatoes, corn is probably the one exception. But if you're seeing undigested food in your stool, that's a surefire sign that you have a weak immune system and you're probably stuck in the sympathetic state. So a lot of what we do involves retraining the nervous system to be more resilient to stress. In other words, if you notice that your chest gets red every single time your email goes off because you're concerned that it's an unhappy client or your boss trying to come down on you or whatever it may be, or every time you hear the doorbell ring or you get that panic or whatever it may be in your life that you feel your body responding to, we have to reteach your nervous system that actually the bombardment of sensations and information in our life is not something to elicit the fight or flight state for. We can actually reteach our nervous system to say, we can handle life stressors from a parasympathetic state. And this doesn't mean you're going to become a vegetable on the couch. In fact, you're going to actually find motivation again to get off the couch. And we're going to teach your nervous system when it's appropriate to go into the sympathetic fight or flight or stressed state for times when it is appropriate to be in that state versus, when you hear your text messages ping with another group text.
I love that. This is really fascinating because I have personally gone down, I dabbled in the gut health space, but I definitely rabbit holed as deep as you can in the somatics and the trauma and the nervous system work. Not pretending to be an expert, but it's just really interesting to hear you talk about the parallels between these two universes. I'm sort of curious. So I have someone really close to me and we were just chatting. For me, I have more of a traditional fight or flight. Like I just get really ADD and I've learned to work with a lot of those things. I'm curious. So just chatting with someone who experiences that more of that freeze state. So like a two-part question. And I also want to ask because I feel like it is less covered, like you mentioned. So I'm sure there's other people who will probably resonate and be curious to hear. From my understanding, a lot of the ways that you could like strengthen the resilience of your nervous system is through like somatic therapy or even like hypnotherapy. So let's just start there. What is your approach to supporting people, or how do you see people really build up that resilience? And I'm curious, as it relates to specifically that freeze state, which people would probably assume is more parasympathetic, how can someone that's experiencing that particular reaction, like what tools can they use to short circuit that freeze state?
Totally. So it's twofold, of course, like anything, right? Same with gut health. We want to make sure that we're addressing the symptoms or putting the fire out first and foremost. And that's where those somatic tools, or what I might call biohacks, can be really helpful, right? So if you are stuck in a freeze state, the jumping, the tapping, the bouncing, anything to bring up the energy can be really helpful, or even laying on a prana mat, something that's going to be stimulating, can be really helpful. But again, if you think about it, that's just like throwing a pill or a supplement on top of the symptom, right? It's a biohack, it's an aid, it's a band-aid, it's something to help pattern interrupt, but it's still not getting to the root of why were you triggered into that freeze or that ADD, that fight or flight state in the first place. So we specifically use a tool called Orpheus. I'm certified and trained in Orpheus therapy. Orpheus is a tool that combines there's familiar aspects to it. It's an audio track that you listen to. It combines EFT tapping, so you tap along to different sounds, binaural beats, arpeggio frequencies, but then it's also triggering different sides of the brain, similar to how EMDR does that with eye movement. Hypnosis, neurolinguistic programming, and did I miss one? I don't think so. Those are all familiar elements that are pulled into the Orpheus tool, but it is also a tool that is separate. The founder of Orpheus is actually he was a computer engineer that then became a trauma therapist, and he took his two specialties in computer engineering and his studies of the brain and basically combined them together. And essentially what we're learning with neuroplasticity is that just as quickly as we can become traumatized, we can also become untraumatized. And I think that's a really important takeaway for everyone here, because oftentimes we think, oh my gosh, this shocking thing happened in my life. I was fired from a job, or I got in a massive car accident, or I was held by gunpoint. I was held by gunpoint at one point in time. That was awful. But right, you have these shocking experiences in life and you think, I'm doomed for life. That's always going to traumatize me. It's something that's always going to be a thing. And this is just like a note to the resiliency of the human spirit and the ingenious way that our brains work. And in that moment that you were shocked into a sympathetic state, just as quickly you can unlearn that response and relearn a new one. The Orpheus tools are roughly 12 to 18-minute tracks. And there's certain ways that you use the tools. There's specific directions that you have to do when you're doing the tools. And that's why obviously working with a therapist is really important when you're doing this kind of work, so we can navigate this together. But going into using the tools with a very specific emotion is really helpful. And again, in The Body That Keeps the Score, this is like a really helpful way to think about it, right? The author explains that they actually did an MRI on patients that were experiencing PTSD flashbacks, active flashbacks. And what they saw was that the Broca's area of the brain had less blood flow. Now, the Broca's area of the brain is actually what's in control of taking conscious thought and shifting it into words, verbalizing your emotions. And maybe the way that we can understand this is you get in an argument with someone and you can't think straight. You're just enraged with emotion. 2 hours later, your brain comes back online and you have that phenomenon where it's, oh, I should have said this. I wish I said that. All of a sudden, your brain is thinking clearly again. That's the perfect example of your brain went into a sympathetic state, Broca's area shut down, and 2 hours later, it's starting to come back online. And now you're able to formulate your thoughts into words. This is I'm sure we can all relate to that. What Orpheus therapy does is it makes that process happen quicker, especially with shocking moments or emotions that are all consuming or overwhelming. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a client this morning. She had what I would categorize as like a mean girl moment. Now, she's a coach. She too is a therapist. This is somebody who has all the somatic tools in her toolbox. And she said to me, Chelsea, I just can't seem to get beyond my sadness and my anger that I am experiencing when I think about these moments, this thing that happened with a friend of mine, this falling out. And because of that sadness and that anger, those emotions are overriding my ability to forgive her and move on. I'm stuck. I'm repeating it. I'm ruminating on it. And like what you said, Delaney, maybe for you, that stuck might look like I am super ADD and I can't focus right now. For other people, that stuck might look like I'm on the couch scrolling Instagram all day, hoping and praying for an answer. For other people, that stuck might just look like obsessing and being really hyper vigilant to if someone is going to be doing that to me again, right? Oh, you're constantly looking out for when someone's out to get you, or you're obsessing about what that person is saying or what that person is doing. These are all examples of being stuck in this emotional state. What we do with the Orpheus therapy is we say, okay, let's go back to that shocking moment. Let's bring those emotions up. Let's relive that moment where the Broca's area of the brain shut down, and let's do the Orpheus track. And through taps and sounds and the experience of the therapy itself, which is about 12 minutes long, it essentially helps us to break those old neural pathways that at one point was telling my brain to go into a survival state and elicit all of those things that happen when we go into that state. Digestion turns off, Broca's area turns off, right? Stress turns on, so sweaty armpits, dilated pupils, all the things that happen when we're in a stress state. And it reteaches the brain that, oh, we are actually in this situation. You can consider it like the flashback, the traumatic flashback of the shocking moment, and turn Broca's area back on during that experience. So we're actually reteaching the subconscious mind that this is not a dangerous moment. We can think about it, we can relive it, and we actually can keep our brain turned on, which allows us more cognitive function, right? What I love so much about this therapy is that this isn't about bypassing. It's not about forgiving the wrongdoings even. It's just about allowing you to not be so emotionally charged by what happened, which just allows our brain to turn back on, and it gives us more of that cognitive control to make a different choice moving forward. If you really desire to forgive and move on, but you just find yourself emotionally stuck and 20 years of talk therapy isn't helping, then we need to look deeper. We need to look at rewiring how the brain is responding to that shocking moment and to those emotions.
All of that. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel like you're a fantastic guest because I'll ask like a 6-word question and I'll learn so much for like several minutes. The best way to podcast. Like my job is so easy.
Totally.
And this is really fascinating. I've actually never heard of Orpheus therapy. I'm definitely going to go poke my head into it and understand what it's all about. It sounds very interesting. And even though I haven't tried that specific modality, those others that you mentioned, I've heard infinite good things about. So yeah, that sounds really fantastic, and just really appreciate you leaning in and helping people out with this stuff, because from someone who's definitely been deep in even just the personal. So this stuff in life and how much it can hurt. And I feel like you mentioned and feel hopeless when you're dealing with life stuff. It's tough. So just on behalf of everyone who's supporting, just thank you for the work you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. And I've got, like I said, I have a free masterclass. It's out there. I'm happy to drop you the link if anyone wants to learn more about the therapy itself and how it works. It's an hour-long masterclass, and I dive deep into all of it. They're on Instagram as Orpheus Mind Tech. If you are a therapist or a coach, you can become certified. I do have an affiliate link for that. If you'd like to look into that, it might give you a discount. I'm not 100% sure. It's one of those things that's utilizing neuroplasticity to our benefit and saying, wow, the brain is very good at creating neural pathways. It's also very good at breaking old ones and creating new ones. We have a tool that allows us to get to the root of not just, okay, now I'm in this fight or flight state. I'm really ADD or I'm experiencing freeze or whatever it may be. Yes, using those other tools as those biohacks, the cold plunges, the hot and cold tools, acupuncture, whatever modality you like to use, those somatic practices to change the frequency that you're in is wonderful. And that's like the day in and day out, like, all right, I'm experiencing this. Let me just get through this. But for me, at least, I was tired of having to go back and course correct or going back in and having to put a Band-Aid after I was already triggered. But that can only go so far and it becomes exhausting. It becomes this like forever self-development cycle where you're like, gosh, at least for me, again, 20 years of therapy. And it was like, I'm still emotionally reactive to this thing. And even though I can cognitively talk my way out of this scenario and I can see the bigger pictures, when I talk about it, I still get upset. And that is frustrating as hell. And this tool has helped me 180-degree shift my emotional reaction to things in life that I would rather just move on from and not hyperfixate on anymore. It's not helpful.
So amazing. I love that. Honestly, I'd rather just pick up the topic for the last year because I think it's just really interesting and valuable for people when using a therapy tool like this. So obviously it's recommended to work with a therapist so you can really like have that mirror and go deeper and maybe even be challenged to go into the really uncomfortable things. But you mentioned there's also like the recording side of things. So if you're doing a self practice, maybe you go by doing on YouTube to just test the waters. Is it equally useful to engage with these resources when you're actually in a parasympathetic state to start your day with that sort of recording? Is it still just as effective or is it mostly effective when you're deeply triggered and then trying to work through it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I would probably say if you're waking up feeling good, I have other tools, other meditations. That's where things like binaural beats and solfeggio frequencies. Here's the thing. We have something called the reticular activating system in our brain. This is the piece of our brain that looks for proof of the beliefs that it holds. So the phenomenon we can use as an example is I buy a car and then I see it everywhere on the road, right? This is your reticular activating system. Your brain is constantly seeking proof of the beliefs and the operating system that it's operating on. So if I am constantly, for example, if I'm trying to build a business and I want to believe that I'm a magnet and I make money easily and effortlessly. If I grew up in a situation like I personally did where my mom had to file bankruptcy and the beliefs were that money doesn't grow on trees and you have to work your ass off to make a lot of money and there's no way that you can effortlessly make money, then no matter how many times I do power poses in the mirror and do affirmation work, every ounce of my body is going to reject that new belief that says I'm a money magnet. Because of this reticular activating system, my brain is also going to seek proof that I'm not a money magnet because I don't actually believe that. What I actually believe is that money is the root of all evil and that money doesn't grow on trees and that, you have to work really hard to make money. That's what I actually believe in my brain. So my eyes and my ears are going to constantly seek proof of those beliefs. Orpheus Tools works on 3 levels. Number 1, the emotions. So first we want to turn down the emotions so Broca's area comes back on and we can cognitively think, okay, what are the actual beliefs that I am operating on? Oh, now I see that I'm actually operating in a pretty scarcity mindset. I really do believe that in order to make money, I have to work really hard. And there's nothing that you can tell me that is going to make me believe otherwise. So there's 2 other tracks that you can explore. There's an eraser track and a creator track. And again, this is like deleting an old software, doing an upgrade, and imprinting a new software. But it does start with the emotions, right? And if you're working with a therapist, you do have access to the tools in between sessions. This is what's really exciting about these tools as well. So it's okay. I don't have to go to therapy once a week and work with my therapist to do these things. I can meet with her once a month. And in between, I can do my own self-work utilizing these tools, which you'll have access to once we're working together. Obviously, there's checks and balances And as far as doing trauma work, it's important to have those checks and balances. But I'm not trying to gatekeep is what I'm trying to say. But
Yeah.
when it comes to trauma work, you do need to have some level of, okay, where can I begin? But then the cool thing about it is they are recorded. So when you are working with a therapist, you can do that self-study in between. Now, the negative emotions destroyer tracks are best used when you are triggered. When you're emotionally enraged, the best case scenario is you get in an argument with someone and instead of arguing online or arguing with your partner, you go into the other room and you hit play on the track. Hitting play is often the hardest part, right? Showing up is the hardest part, but you can always go back. Those emotions are pretty easy to access. It doesn't take a lot to say, hey, how'd that argument go this morning until it triggers. You feel it in your gut, literally, and in your throat. There's a lot of people who deal with acid reflux. This is the emotional component to it. To answer your question, when you're not triggered, there's definitely probably other tools that I would recommend to help continue to support your brain seeking new proof of your new beliefs, of the new paradigm that you're trying to operate in. So there's a lot of people out there with a lot of wonderful brain rewiring tools. It's about consistency and it's about continuing that. Okay, I know I've addressed this once. I've been able to turn off the emotional reaction to it. Now I'm trying to encourage my brain to seek proof of the new belief. So not only are we going to erase the new belief, we're going to blast it out of the water using these tools, but then the other tools that, what's her name? Rewired, I think. Oh, I don't know her name right now. Jenny something. She's on SoundCloud. She has some wonderful work. There was a doctor in that documentary Heal on Netflix. He has a lot of great work about, again, it's sounds, it's meditations, it's music that you can play just as like good checks and balances. So my personal practice is when I'm triggered about something, I do the deep work. And then my daily practice is right before I go to bed at night, I click one of those deep sleep brain rewiring meditations and I hit play. Same thing in the morning. If I'm waking up in the morning feeling good, then I'm probably not going to just jump to doing a trauma tool. I'm going to do something else that's going to support my brain saying, okay, all day long, this is what I want to see. And I want my reticular activating system to seek proof of my new belief. How can I set myself up for success in that way? There's a lot of different tools out there to do that. These are just some of the ones that we encourage. Unfortunately, I can't remember their names right now.
Yeah,
that doesn't really help anyone, but
no, it's awesome.
Mind Body Rewire. First, shout out to Jenny. That's her program, Mind Body Rewire. She's on Instagram.
Awesome. Sweet. Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Hearing you articulate that, it's like, oh yeah, that would be pretty depressing if I woke up happy and just started thinking about my trauma as deeply as possible. But I love that. I had phases, but I've never had times where I'll do a Joe Dispenza, verbalization practice, which is different from what you're talking about, but somatically feeling the emotion of the thing and seeing it clearly in the picture. So I really love that.
And it's true, Delaney, Joe Dispenza is a wonderful example of if I'm triggered and I go into one of his visualization practices, every inch of my body is going to resist that. I'm going to think, this is bullshit. What the hell? This is stupid. I'm not in the mindset to visualize my best life ever. That's when you know that there's probably some trauma work, some emotional work that we need to tap into to remove those blocks. So that way your brain is more receptive to the rewiring tools and the visualization tools and the mental rehearsals, for lack of a better term.
Oh, wow. Very cool. I think everyone listening just got a ton of value, especially because we not only covered the theory of it, but we got so many great tools that they can actually go apply. Thank you very much for sharing that. Maybe just one really high level question before we end as it relates to your journey as the entrepreneur, or even if it's less about the business, but more how are you actually your journey of bringing this to the world and maximizing the amount of people you're serving? What are maybe just a few of the things that really unlocked for you the impact you're looking to make with your business?
Yeah, it's so good. And honestly, Delaney, the more I dive into this work, the more I realize it really has to do with nervous system, your nervous system's ability to handle growth. I think as entrepreneurs, we're not afraid to fail. I think those of us who are creating anything and putting it out into the world, we're beyond the self-development 101 where it's see the fear and do it anyway. Yeah, we get it. I think we're a little bit beyond that. For me, the next level of unlocking that next level success was really all about what am I afraid of as far as what does it mean to unlock that next level success? More eyeballs on me, more dollar bills in my bank, more responsibility, more people I have to pay, more taxes I have to pay, more hours on the calendar. These are all like just fears and limiting beliefs and examples of things that go in for me, that category of fear of success. Once we get to a point where, again, we're no longer afraid of failure, we're actually afraid of success and the responsibilities that come with a lot of eyes and a lot of dollars, right? And by eyes, we live in a social media world. And I think a lot of people are afraid to market their services. You probably hear a lot of people say, I don't want to sound salesy. Again, that's just bullshit for saying, I'm afraid of putting myself out there because I'm afraid of what people are going to think of me. Or even more, I'm afraid that I'll actually be a success and then I'm going to have to follow through on what I'm selling. And that's going to require this and this from me. And I don't actually know if I have it in me to be able to do that. So for me, it was a lot of doing that nervous system work and really putting myself in those scenarios of success and saying, okay, what does it actually feel like to say, oh, I made a 5-figure month? Or what does it actually feel like to say, I'm closing on 7 figures this year? I'm not there yet, but I will be, right? That's that next level. It's like, how can I get to a point where I can actually visualize that next level success? And where in my body do I feel it? For me, it's in my throat. Right? It's okay. What do I need to say? Who do I need to say it to? What do I need to blast through the water in order to remove those blocks? So like any success in life, it's really about removing the blocks that are keeping you from experiencing that success. And the way we do one thing is the way we do anything in our life. How we relate to our business is how we relate to our health. It's how we relate to religion and our partner and anyone. The foundations of who we are, we're going to carry our nervous system over into all pieces of our life pie. So whether you're trying to make $1 million or lose 15 pounds, it's the same idea. The fear of what it would actually look like to lose 15 pounds. Oh, then I might experience unwanted attention from the opposite sex. Or I might experience more mean girls. It's safer for me to hold on to 15 pounds than it is to lose 15 pounds, right? We really have to get nitty gritty into what are your actual fears of reaching what you want to reach. And for me personally, again, it just really had a lot to do with, now I get it. I'm not afraid of being salesy. I'm actually afraid of being seen by millions of people. Why am I afraid of being seen by millions of people? That one time in high school, I got up on stage and someone laughed at me, or that whatever. Insert your own experiences there, right? The brain is only wired to survive, and it will continue to do what it needs to do in order to survive. And the theoretical lizard under the rock, the lizard living under the rock is a lot safer than the lizard sunbathing on top, because if the hawk flies by, it might eat the lizard. But the lizard under the rock is never going to experience the joys of the warmth of the sun, right? It's what is it going to take to be able to remove the blocks from being able to get on top of the rock? And then from there, finding the right people to align with to support you. I'm not an influencer, but social media is absolutely a piece of my marketing strategy. So who do I need to hire to help me pump out content to get my work in front of more eyes? That's what it means to be a leader. And that's what looking at the fears of what's keeping you from taking those empowered action steps, or keeping you in freeze, or keeping you stuck in an ADD brain, going to make those blocks a lot easier to remove.
Yeah, all that. I've asked that type of question to a ton of entrepreneurs, and for whenever reason, this is fielded one of my favorite answers, because usually it's a tactical thing about what you need to build a successful business, and the fact and just tying it back into most of what our conversation has been about, the nervous system. I think it's just really refreshing, and probably something that not enough people, even those who are aware, they're probably choosing to focus on strategy, tactics, because it's easier and less scary. But a lot of what you just shared rings true in my life, and I'm sure a lot of listeners have just opportunity to be even more real and look at where we beat that lizard, and where do we have the opportunity to find more courage to lean in and see what's on the other side of that uncertainty or potential discomfort. You mentioned.
I was just going to say, it's a lot easier to follow through and trust your gut when you understand where you're coming from. So the strategy is always going to be there. It's the same thing. How do I heal my gut? People want me to lay out a 5-step process, which of course we have in our signature program. Do these things, you will feel better. But foundationally, if you're not doing these things, And if you're not looking at what got you sick in the first place, which is a dysregulated nervous system, or what had you sabotage your business in the first place, or what had you spend all your money for no savings in the first place, then you can do all the strategies in the world, but you're going to stay on the same rat race. You're going to stay on the same roller coaster. So we want to get off the roller coasters. That way you can lean into the action steps that actually feel good for you. You have to feel good playing the game in order to play the game. I don't know about you, but we can all pay to play. We can all do all the things, but if it doesn't feel good, then we're probably not going to live to be 100 years old.
Exactly. Well, I really love that response. You mentioned a bunch of really great resources, books, other teachers that inspire you. Around that through line you just mentioned of like really figuring out how you can grow your nervous system's capacity to handle the growth. Yeah. Are there any resources that you recommend as it relates to like how people can think about that if they want to go and chew on this process a bit more? Of course, including your own work and your own hobby.
Yeah. Listen, I'm all about a one-stop shop and a really efficient process. And for me, that's been Orpheus. They're on Instagram, Orpheus Mind Tech. You can watch my free masterclass. And again, I'm not trying to gatekeep it. It's just a tool that for me has completely changed my life. And it's the tool that I use in health and in business, period. It's what I use to rewire my nervous system. Learning the theory is one thing and implementing it in practice. This is the tool that has helped me the most. I have a degree in psychology. I'm a yoga teacher. I've taught meditation and mindfulness since 2013. I've been in talk therapy my whole life. This is the tool that has changed my life. I have a membership for $50 a month. If you want to come in and check it out for 1 month and try it out for 1 month, that's the intention of that membership, is to be able to just try it. Again, because it is a therapist-based tool, I wish I could say, here, come try it for free, but I just can't. I can't do that. But I do have that masterclass for free that dives deep and teaches you the theory of it. So that way you can learn and understand a little bit more. And, it doesn't have to be complicated. I guess I'll just cross that T and dot that I and say, Delaney, so many people say, where else can I look for answers? Just look in the damn mirror. That's it. You literally have all the answers inside of you. You know exactly what you need to heal. You know what you need to be doing. You know what you need to stop doing. And if you need support to following through on those action steps, then myself or other practitioners obviously can help you do that. But at the end of the day, my job is to redirect you to your own wisdom and your own intuition, and to remove the blocks that are preventing you from communicating to your own intuition. And at the end of the day, if you're looking outside for answers, you're doing it wrong. You got to start turning around and looking inside.
I love it. I made a note to make sure to include all those resources, your masterclass, Orpheus, all your personal channels, so people can engage and follow along on the journey and dive deeper into all these things. I thought we were going to talk about gut health today for the most part, and we have been a little bit, but I was so pleasantly surprised with this conversation, and I think it's a really refreshing take on all these topics. So, John, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it, and just thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Delaney. It's been a pleasure.